Welcome back to America's Voice Live. So good to have you here on a Tuesday as we make our way through another very busy week. We've heard a lot about Ukraine in the last few weeks, of course, from the mainstream media. At first giving the impression Vladimir Putin was losing, but it seems like that has changed some. Russia is moving forward, albeit slowly but steadily. That's what they're doing, toward the capital of Kyiv. Another topic that seemed to draw a lot of emotion out of politicians and the media is with the biolabs in Ukraine. First, they didn't exist. Now they do, but the U.S. didn't have anything to do with them. Now the U.S. does, funds some of them. Pretty confusing. Here to keep track of all of it is the people, because here's the problem. If you talk about it, you get called a traitor by U.S. senators and others like Mitt Romney. Here to discuss it, former Navy Reserve Intelligence Officer and former White House Senior Advisor, Commander Paul Chabot, retired, of course. Paul, good to have you here. Let's start with this. And you help me here because you educate me, you educate the viewers. My understanding is a lot of these biolabs were all over in 1991, not just Ukraine, but in other parts of the Warsaw Pact countries when the Soviet Union fell apart. And so the Americans came in, as did the British and others, to secure these labs, to make sure that the people that were working there didn't say go to Iran or China or other people that we don't really care for to go to work. So is that where this started, or did we build biolabs on our own? It's pretty clear they're there, or let's just start there. Let's see where we get.
Yeah, so let's start this off. You can even go back further in history to World War II. After Nazi Germany fell in Japan, we did the same with their scientists and others, but also to secure facilities for the safety of the world. So when Russia fell, they were largely a bankrupt nation. And so countries around the world came together to help secure facilities, make sure they didn't fall into negative hands. But what we're seeing today, I think, is a little bit different. I think this story largely started with Russia. My concern is that, look, Putin, KGB, is really concerned internally about his own people. Also, the war is not going well for him in Ukraine, albeit slowly. And so I think from an intelligence perspective, how we need to look at this is, why would this be advantageous for Putin or Russia, for that matter, to tell their own people? Well, to justify continued advancement, particular targeting of civilian areas. But my concern is that, are these really bio-weapon facilities, or are they largely more current public health facilities, which certainly do investigative work on dangerous viruses and others? But to call them strictly bioterror, I think right now is a stretch.
All right, so, but we agree the biolabs are there. We agree the United States financed those labs for whatever. They've been there for 30 years, right? Been there for 30 years because since the fall of the Soviet Union, maybe some of them are new. But when Mitt Romney calls Tulsi Gabbard a traitor, I find that shocking. I don't know that anything that Tulsi Gabbard said was inaccurate. Please help me.
Well, look, I think Tulsi's got the best interests of this country on mind. She has concerns because, look, the worst case scenario here is that we don't know what we don't know. And this turns out to be a tragic event for the world. And so, look, I would hope that Tulsi would come forward with additional information. But remember, she largely might not be able to. She's currently in military status. She might have viewing on certain intelligence, but which is not shareable, right? It's compartmentalized. So again, the danger is we don't know what we don't know, but based on her position and the flag that she has raised, certainly should generate considerable discussions, because we need to make sure that that is not an active route. Because if it is, it places not just the Ukrainians, but our NATO allies and our own troops in grave danger, which are just miles from the border in many circumstances around Ukraine.
So let's talk about this for a moment, because Adam Kinzinger, soon to be former congressman because he won't survive his challenge in Illinois, Mitt Romney, a former relevant political figure in America, they're both calling anybody, not just Tulsi, anybody. I mean, they're going after Tucker Carlson over on Fox News. They're going after Tulsi. Anybody that talks about the biolabs is a traitor to America. I'm sorry. When did the freedom of speech and having a discussion and throwing out all the facts and trying to figure out what the truth is, When did that become traitorous behavior in America?
Yeah, and it's not. And I think they might be splitting hairs. Biolabs are one thing, but to add bioterror onto it is quite another. And I think, again, we've got to look at this in the framework of what Russia is trying to demonstrate today, not just to the world, but to their own people to continue their advancement. Certainly, we need to beat one single drum here as the United States of America and not show internal fighting. But I would hope that if there are significant concerns showing direct bioterrorism, that becomes worldwide knowledge. Right now, we're in the infancy stages of this discussion. High-level people have raised this flag, including Tulsi Gabbard. Let's explore this further, but the clock is ticking because Russia continues their advancement on the Ukrainian capital. And quite honestly, Russia doesn't have much time. They're probably at a 10-day window for stallment on their campaign. And Putin, like a caged rat, is in a corner. And he's looked at this war, not gone favorably to him. What other wild cards can he pull out? And I think certainly we're going to have infighting in this country about bioterror, terrorism. We need to learn more about it. But at the same time, we can't keep our eye off of what Russia is doing to advance this own very narrative and how they could potentially use that to their advantage.
Commander, is it possible? I mean, you've got a lot of experience here. Is it possible that sometimes when you have a war like this, and I'm not excusing the attacks on civilians that seem pretty clear, I'm not excusing journalists being shot and killed, I'm not excusing any of that, 2.5 million people fleeing now, most to Poland. But is it possible that you don't have a good guy in a fight? Vladimir Putin, bad guy. Ukraine, very corrupt. Money laundering, human trafficking, who knows what. Hunter Biden and the Clintons all went there to do something in shady deals, it seems to me. Is it possible there really aren't any good guys when it comes to government, anyhow? Your thoughts?
Well, no, I think that's absolutely true. When we look around the world, we've got countries right next to us in America. Mexico, for example, considered an ally in some sense, but a very corrupt nation with drug cartels that impact this country. Certainly these countries around Europe, some are far more advanced and more in line with us, and others have significant corruption issues, hands down. But again, I think what the world is looking at here is seeing these patriots, if you will, the ordinary average Ukrainians, which are taking up arms against the evil empire, as Reagan had rightfully called the USSR before they collapsed, and seeing what I think many of us feel are patriots of what we would do in our own country if we were invaded. So we've now turned a corner to where the free world is largely behind the Ukrainian people. You're going to have an address tomorrow by their president to a joint session of Congress as well. And really NATO, NATO around the borders right now is watching this. And we're in what's called the fog of war. We don't know what we don't know. People are very concerned. Russia's a nuclear power. Part of their course of action is a first strike. If they ever feel this will turn into that. And so we know what Russia's course of action will be. And there's so much that plays into the fog of war. We want to, temper this down so it doesn't get into World War III. At the same time, support freedom-loving people the best that we can.
Yeah. And just one note on what you said there. I don't believe that Mexico has ever been a true ally of the United States. 100,000 Americans or more died last year from overdoses. Many of those drugs, thousands of people died from the illegal drugs coming over the Mexican border.
Right.
They allowed millions of people to flow in. Maybe what Mexico declared war on us a long time ago, just in a more subtle way. Commander, thank you for being here.
My pleasure. And you look at the border in Ukraine, border in Mexico, that's another discussion for our national